back here. I love the off season, Joe. It's so much action, new stuff, new things going on. El Paso just announced their new head coach today. Um, I thought it was was an overall good press conference a couple of hours ago. They announced John Hutchinson. Did I say right, Joe?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you
Hutchinson.
did. Yeah.
All right. So before we even start, and we're going to try to show parts of the press conference here. Joe, what was your overall read of the press conference and the presentation of the new head coach?
No, I think the right things were said. It just based on the surface and what we were told and what I researched, comes from a similar background that Mark Lowry came from. Definitely with Coach John Hutchinson, the things that he said in his opening statement, the things he said over a press conference that lasted approximately 40-45 minutes. He had some themes there that were recurring that reminded me a lot of Lowry. Of course, not to compare, but just as far as the professionalism and the themes that the topics and the principles that he's trying to relay to the media, to Locomotive fans, they were a constant in his press conference. One of the things, and it's up on my story right now on the Striker Texas, was the fact that he kept using the same. His favorite adjective today was to use ambitious. He's an ambitious coach. He's an ambitious coach. He's an ambitious person, and anybody that he works with that he comes in contact with, as far as the players, he wants them to share his ambition, as far as ambition for winning, as ambitions for getting the team trophies, ambitions for being better every
But
single
Joe,
day.
can I tell you? Can I tell you that for me, I think was the worst part of the press conference. To be honest, right? I maybe because I don't like those pre-made, responses. Maybe because I don't like, I usually say if you have to say too much what you are, usually trying to hide something that you aren't, right? But I think that was the only
Good
part
point.
that was the only part that I did not like. But I'm with you. I liked it overall. It was good. I think it has the profile of El Paso. And again, I think before we even start here, I think we should be doing two things. One is comment the fact that what we know about this new head coach, about him, is about 15 minutes what we heard him saying over the 45-minute interview, right? There was a lot of questions, a lot of people, um, and of course the organization, Andrew Allen and the ownership there had more chances to talk to him, know him better. So it's even not much fair for us to judge this hire at this point, right? I think it's too early, but we're gonna try to do our best. We're gonna try to start here and show the introduction of let him present himself, right? And I think he did that well, so people can know who the new head coach is.
With a coaching pedigree, including as a head coach and obviously on the professional level. And I think with this individual, we got somebody who met all of those criteria and exceeded many of them. So with that, I am very pleased to introduce today John Hutchinson as the new head coach and technical director of El Paso Locomotive FC. John embodies all of those qualities that I just talked about. He impressed us. He impressed Andrew Forrest, our general manager, ownership, and specifically as it relates to most clearly to his upcoming tenure with Locomotive, his time with Seattle Sounders, one of the most successful and highest quality organizations in Major League Soccer, and recent coaching experience internationally with what we would call a first division team in Japan. In fact, a team that is owned by the City Group, which also owns Manchester City in the Premier League. Both examples of John's pedigree and experience that we think will apply very well here. Despite the fact that I would consider John to be quite young, he has nearly a quarter century professional playing and coaching experience that he will bring with him, along with his family, his wife Kate, his son, and his daughter. to El Paso here in the coming weeks. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Johnson. And John, welcome to El Paso.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for the introduction. Really nice. Yeah, so I'm excited to obviously be announced as the head coach of El Paso. I was born in Australia, in a small country town in Victoria called Morwell. I started my pro career when I was 16 years old under a really famous coach in Australia named Frank Arrock, who picked me up from a local team. Played professional football for 19 years, mainly in Australia. I did have a loan deal at Chengdu Blades in China for 6 months. Played in Asian Champions League, was captain of my Central Coast Mariners club. I was there for 10 years and 2 years as assistant coach. So I captained them to the first championship in 2013. Then from there, I took off to Seattle, which was F2 at that time. I was assistant coach under Ezra Hendrickson, and then became the head coach in 2018. And then went back to Melbourne in the A-League to become assistant coach, and then returned back to Seattle Sounders, where I became assistant coach and head of development with the first team, and then moved to Japan with the Yokohama F Marinos to be head coach under a manager system. And that's where I was really fortunate to meet probably the greatest Australian coach that we've ever produced in Ange Postecoglou, who's now the manager at Celtic. And I spent 7 months with him learning and guidance of how to become a top manager, or head coach as it's called in America. So, and it brings me now to El Paso, where
So Joe, it has some pedigree, right? I don't think he has that much experience as a head coach, but good career so far.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and the fact that he was the head of player development and one of the assistant coaches for the MLS first team in 2020, that says a lot. To be on that kind of a bench, it says a lot. And yeah, no, definitely the resume I think speaks for itself with regards to the kind of coach that could come in to a USL championship team and mix it up and make an impact and make his team a factor.
We were talking a little bit before we came into this, and one of your questions, which I feel kind of not bad, but I think the teams could be a little bit more clear, right? You made a very simple question to the front office about the length of the contract and what the contract is. I'm trying to get the video here.
I wasn't even that specific. I just asked what details they could give us with regards to their new hire.
And unfortunately, I'm struggling here to get the video up here with Alan responding, but Alan responded, "Oh, we want to have a coach here for as long as we can." No, what can you say about that?
Quote unquote.
I felt you were a little bit disappointed. You wanted to hear more.
No, I mean, just an idea. I realize, I don't know. It's not a lack of experience on Alan's part with regards to being the president of Mountain Star Sports Group. I think, while you might not have to discuss those things with the El Paso Chihuahuas, the AAA team or anything like that, because it's just something you don't deal with. I mean, I just thought it was a valid question on my behalf. The length of contract. Mark Lowry was here for 3 years. I wasn't asking how much he was making. I just wanted to know the details as far as, what kind of offer that was made for what period amount of time, because if we know that gives you an idea as to how much they believe in him and how much patience they might have with this new head coach if things don't pan out the way everybody hopes they do. That's all.
Yeah, no, I do think that Alan was trying to be nice in the response, and they're not going to disclose that. But I think we are going to do our homework here on our end and try to get that information for our subscribers or for our audience. I know for a fact that the front office is watching us at this point, and maybe we can get that response sooner than later. If not, in the coming days, weeks, we're going to try to do that. I really liked it at the end. The club also, there was a good attendance overall in media in the press conference today, more than usual, for obvious reason also. But I really liked the club saying, "Hey, we're going to be available for one-on-ones. We're going to be available for exclusives, and of course, the striker test is going to be there. Me and you, Joe, we're going to be working on that. I mean, moving forward." The other interesting part that I thought, Joe, was when I asked the Andrew Forrest about Copa Terras, right? How important is, if they had already talked to coach about the importance of Copa Terras. And I was very happy to see how proud Andrew was of winning the Copa Terras and having Coach Laurie as the best coach of Copa Terras, winning the Supporter Shield. How did you see the response, and do you feel that the supporters also in El Paso feel that, and do you think Coach John is going to be under pressure to get this title again next year and be as successful as Coach Laurie was?
I mean, pressure to retain the Copa Tejas, I don't think so. One thing that you kind of have, one thing that you need to, that the Copa Tejas, they'll align themselves to retain the cup if they start playing good and winning games. That kind of takes care of itself. Granted, we still haven't determined what the league structure or what the regular season structure is going to be like for this upcoming USL championship season. So there might be less games, obviously less opportunities to accumulate points in the Copa Tejas. But no, I mean, I think I have no reason why not to believe that Coach Hutchinson won't realize that, that it's important and that there's a lot of pride there. And I think he'll learn quickly that the games that the Locomotives play against San Antonio, against RGV, I was almost going to say Austin, my bad, but whatever might be there. But I think he's quickly going to learn that those games are very intense, that they're very difficult. Along with the New Mexico game, I think you can cluster those games against those other rivals as being a little bit different, not more important, not any less, just a little bit more different, a little bit more intense as far as facing them. And if you get worked up to do those games and you get the results, obviously the Copa will become a bigger issue as the season progresses.
Yeah, another couple of things that pop up to my attention, and I want to hear also from you. I didn't have the time yet to write your article, the striker taxes, but it's up there, it's live, so whoever is watching us is able to now read the article that Joe wrote about the presentation of the new head coach for El Paso Locomotive, Coach John. But there was one answer in his press conference that was a mixture of happiness on my end and a little bit of concern, especially with my experience with, running teams in this level in the United States. Is he was very clear on how he wants to play, right? He said that I'm gonna offensive, fast on the sides, and he actually even at some point he said I want to play a 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-3-3, whatever you wanna read that. I'm happy on the sense of hearing a coach that he wants to play offensive, and actually Andrew made that clear also, hiring when he said we didn't want a coach that would sit back and play. We want an offensive coach, and that part I understand, and I fully agree with Andrew. That was my mentality when I was putting the teams together. But one thing that I learned over time is that at this level, you can only play the style that you have the pieces to play. And if you want to make your players play the style of the coach, it's going to be a little bit of a challenging at this level in the United States.
Well, one of the things that kind of grabbed my attention is he commented about offensive style of play. And this is just my opinion. If you have an offensive style of play, and correct me if I'm wrong, let me know what you think. But going with a 4-2, meaning two holding midfielders, that's not very
offensive.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but in these first 3 seasons that the Locomotive have played, I've been the first one to say, okay, you have players that are quality players at this level. You have a roster that's one of the best rosters. You got one of the biggest payrolls in the league. Now, if that's the case, you shouldn't have to play with 2 holding midfielders. One should do, and just let it go. And that's what Mark Lowry did a majority of the 2021 season. So that just kind of caught my attention really quick, where I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever, however the scheme goes. But no, yeah. And I think what you're saying, Roberto, I think that also ties in with the question that I asked him about how big his roster is going to be. And he went again with the same philosophy that the Locomotive have had in their first 3 years, is a small team of anywhere between 20 and 23 players, as opposed to the traditional 27 through 30 man roster. Yes, the philosophy might be quality over quantity, but like I said, to a certain extent, when the season comes towards the end and the toll of the season, the way the season is, hits, that's when teams find themselves into trouble. And that's why you might find yourself scrambling a little bit. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, is you can declare what you want. If you don't have the pieces, it's going to make it that much more difficult. Although in this case, I will say that I am very, very comfortable with the returning players that they have thus far for this season. That base of this team has remained intact, and just with it remaining intact, without a doubt, this makes the Locomotive one of the favorites to do important things in what is the Western Conference.
Yeah, my last comment, I think we can wrap this up, is came about Diego Luna and the challenges of developing and winning. Did you like his response when he's saying that it is possible to develop and win at the same time? And how did you feel about that answer that he had?
No, I mean, I can see where it's coming from. Another thing that he did mention, Roberto, is, well, yeah, let's see how long we keep him, because that's another possibility.
That's true.
Someone might
True.
take him up, and that's one of the that's one of the things that, as supporting and as passionate as the El Paso fan base is, that's a reality they have to open themselves up to, and so does the local media and a variety of podcasts that discuss the Locomotives. Is they aren't our players, and that's one thing where I think you and I differ with. Whenever John Hutchinson said about being ambitious and he wants players to have high goals for themselves, I agree with that.
That part I agree. That part I agree, Joe. I think you have to have in this level. If you don't have that, you're not going to have good players. You're not going to have. I fully agree with you.
You're going to have a very low plateau of me, and then that plateau will turn into mediocrity very, very quickly. So yeah, I mean, that was an interesting thing, but that he said, and I think that's something that we have to get used to, where it's like, if El Paso can become a reputable for bringing in players, being extremely good, turning heads, grabbing attention, and moving forward, then be it. I mean, that would be a successful club at this level, mixed in with players that are already experienced and might be looking towards the tail end of their career, that have a lot to offer to an institution in every which way. I think that's a perfect combination.
Yeah, I also think I think it's aligned with what you're saying in a way. Is it makes it easier on his job. Yes, there's more pressure because of the successful franchise that he's coming in, but on the other hand, he's coming in into and I think he said that a little bit at the press conference. I'm coming into a club that it is structured, a club that is successful on the front office and in the team and the squad, and there was a lot of time that we spent in the press conference talking about how Andrew Forrest had to sign some players even before he had a head coach, to allow the head coach when he comes in to have a spine, a structure for the team, and and I think in that way he comes to an organization that is a successful one, and makes his job a little bit easier in that sense. But he's going to have to show results moving forward, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I think I it wouldn't surprise me if when Coach Hutchinson gets here, he is pleasantly surprised with the degree of professionalism, if he hasn't been exposed to that or gotten a hint of that or kind of come to his own realization of it. The degree of professionalism that the Locomotive do have. It's rather impressive, for the organization that Mountain Star Sports Group has put together, a sports group that obviously has 3 franchises. And you would think, oh, it's very easily to intermix roles, and you know what, you can, within the organization, no, there's very, very strict boundaries where the locals have their group of employees that stick strictly to their role to help that club. Same thing for the Chihuahuas and obviously FC Juarez across the border.
Yeah. To finalize here, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put myself on the spot. I'm going to answer the same question that I'm going to make to you, Joe. Is I personally was expecting a known name for this position, because I do think that the El Paso Locomotive today, with the 3 seasons that they had, there are a lot of known names out there that would want to take this job. I really believe that. But what was your first impression? Positive, negative? Are you looking, forward? What was that first impression that you had?
It was overall good, and there's one thing that he said that Mark Lowry and I used to talk about all the time, and obviously he doesn't know that the conversation that Mark Lowry and I had.
Of course.
But he said one thing. He says, "I want players that fit with this El Paso community, that are a fit for El Paso." Okay, and this is
that comes from the ownership group, from Alan, from Ed. Most likely they had this conversation over, right? Don't you think so?
Yes, but not really, and I'll tell you why. Because while the Locomotive understand this, that you need to have players that are interested in coming in, interested in being here, and interested in living in this part of the world, in El Paso, which, there might be various opinions about the borderlands, and that's another discussion for another day. You've been here on a handful,
I love it. I love it. I gotta tell you, I love
whatever.
it.
But I'll tell you what, though, Roberto, that concept and that having that constant as one of your principles for running your organization and your club, it doesn't seem, and not to compare, but yes, I can't help but to compare, is that's one thing where I think FC Juarez is having a very, very hard time. They want to bring in stars. They want to bring in big names to the Liga MX franchise. And it might be hard to lure those people, to lure quality big name players. Granted, it's a different division, a different level. And I might be comparing apples and oranges, but I think this is where where there is that similarity. You want to have people in this club, in this part of the world, that want to be here,
be there,
and are not just collecting
and to be was that he's moving his right. So he was just working in Japan for the last year or 6 months, whatever. His family was not there. His family was in Australia, right? And he's moving the whole family to El Paso. So I guess he is looking on the long term. Although Alan never responded on time with the contract, but he like that the coach is looking on the long term. My first impression, Joe, is I'm gonna be on the middle, on the top of the wall here, right? I don't know how you say that in English, but I think there were goods and bads. but I will give the credit to the organization. I will give the credit to Andrew that and Alan that have spent more time with him, that knows what they're doing. But I do think that he's going to have to prove himself, and there's some challenges moving forward for him. But again, he said all good things. There's nothing that we can say really that was bad in the press conference, right?
Right, and I think this is going to be. You got to remember. I mean, Roberto, and you can relate with regards to Austin and that franchise at the USL level. But this, I think, is another step of growing and developing for the Locomotive as an institution, because you have to face a new challenge in finding a new coach, because you needed to find a new coach, but you're also, how are you going to manage that expectation with your fan base? Because you've been successful these first 3 years. You've, as far as adversity on the field of play, as far as seeing rough times, as far as wins and losses, you've never learned that. So I mean, this is going to be a challenge. It's a new challenge for the institution, and obviously it's a new challenge for Hutchinson, who finds himself in this position for the very first time ever.
And again, let's remember everybody, and like you said, a lot of people know this, and if somebody's watching doesn't know, I put the Austin Bold team together from scratch to the last few years. My hardest decision of all was to hire the head coach. Right, the head coach is the image, is everything for the franchises, and again, I know how difficult it is that position. But anyways, we're here talking about the best team in Texas, El Paso Locomotive, hiring John Hutchinson as their head coach. I think it's a overall happy day for the locals, and it's going to be a good season for everybody. At least, like we said, El Paso was the best team in Texas of all divisions this year. There's also another thing before we go. They said the preseason starts on the 20th of January also, right?
Exactly,
I think that's also another important information here that we gotta relay. And very soon we're gonna have all the information about preseason for all the teams in MLS, USL, and NWSL. What the teams are looking like. Before we go, Joe, any final words?
No, just looking forward to. I'm sure the time's going to fly from now until January 30th. It's approximately 31 days by my calculation right now, from the start of the Locos preseason. So, I think the holidays usually come by and they fly. They fly by. So before we know it, I'll be back out at the complex for the Locomotives, bringing you all the coverage for the Striker Texas.
That's it. You're listening and you're watching myself, Roberto Silva. I'm the executive director of the Striker Texas. Joe Rodriguez, our senior writer for El Paso Locomotive, the locals. And today, El Paso announced the head coach, John Hutchinson, as their new head coach and technical director. Looking forward for next year. Congratulations once again for the organization for the amazing year that they had, and support the Striker Texas. Subscribe, follow us on social media. We can only do what we do if you support us, and if you want to support local soccer, support the Striker Texas, and we're supporting local soccer. So stay tuned, and that's it. Support local soccer.
Happy holidays, everyone.